I'm going to talk to you about something that I have literally been thinking about all weekend. I've been thinking about it since Thursday, okay? Now, Hulk Hogan died on Thursday. I think it was Thursday. Whatever. Hulk Hogan died. A lot of people did a little grave dancing when Hulk Hogan died. I don't think I danced on his grave. I may have sent a couple of texts that said prayers down. However, there was definite grave dancing. And a big part of why there was grave dancing was, quite honestly, people have been getting these Hulkamania jokes off now for a really, really, really long time. The folks in the tweetosphere have been preparing for Hulk Hogan to die for a very long time. And all the jokes they had been getting off already, they were set to get off. This was just what it was, right? There's a whole lot of memes around it. Ryan, you ever seen the meme of him in the NWO get up and he spray painting the N on the wall?
I've not seen that one.
Yeah. Presumably in real time, he was doing NWO, but given all the other stuff.
Given the things we've learned.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying, right? Yeah. It's kind of like that South Park, what you call it?
Yes, people who annoy you.
Yeah, yes. There we go. Like that's kind of what we had. So, we've been ready for this to happen. The Hulkster was 71, 70, baby. Long life. You know what I'm saying? It's not like he died a little earlier than he was supposed to necessarily. You wrestling, you lived to 70. Shit, man. That's like being 150 years old when you think about it. But anyway, I mentioned the grave dancing because my good buddy Ethan Strauss wrote a column that was chastising those who chose to dance on Hulk Hogan's grave and to say that made them look small. And, Ethan's my guy. I guess I've known Ethan now for, I don't think 15 years, but a very, very, very long time. And, since, he started writing the stuff he's been writing lately, I still rock with him because I think a lot of the stuff he says actually makes sense, right? The job of the columnist is not to make me like him, it's to make me think. And generally speaking, he makes me think. Man, I hated that Hulk Hogan column so much, man. And I be trying not to do this because I know how patronizing it can seem. And I started texting him about it. And I ain't want to seem like I was wagging my finger at him, but I was wagging my finger. I don't know if it was at him, but there was definitely some. It was you know what I'm saying? The wagging had taken place. And the reason I wagged my finger about it was, I understand that everybody needs an angle, but under those circumstances, I think that I would have raised the question as to why it is that people feel so compelled to dance on this particular person's grave rather than it makes you look bad to dance on his grave. Like, people know that. And I also do think that with the breakdown of our civility that is a result of having the internet in our pockets all of the time, that we are more inclined to do that. So, there's levels at which I see why you would choose to do that, but nah, not this time. And I think that there's a number of reasons that the Hulkster got his grave danced on. But Ethan and I were going back and forth about it, and he made a point that I thought was fairly interesting. Was one, he said he wasn't really into wrestling growing up, which I could totally see. And he said he didn't realize how many people were into wrestling, which on one level I think was interesting. The other is, I don't know exactly how old Ethan is. I think I'm probably 4 or 5 years older than him, but that's enough of a difference in age that the significance of what wrestling was different in his childhood than it was in mine.
Yeah, we have a larger age gap, me and you.
Yes.
And I understood Hulk Hogan as a Mount Rushmore wrestler.
Yes.
I did not understand how famous Hulk Hogan was.
Okay, so that is interesting for you to say, because here's what I did not realize until fairly recently, and reading different books and watching the Mr. McMahon doc that Netflix did, because I stopped watching wrestling sometime in the 90s because, I turned 12. You know what I'm saying? You motherfuckers is really still out here watching wrestling. I'm not talking about you, Lance. I love you. The rest of you guys, I'm just kind of you know how I feel about y'all watching wrestling, especially those of y'all who get sensitive when I call it wrestling. How dare you? You watching wrestling and you're mad I call it wrestling? Anyway, I didn't quite realize that the wrestling of my very small age childhood was the beginning of the rise of wrestling, right? So I don't remember WrestleMania 1 or 2. I do remember WrestleMania 3. Well,
Did you see the number of how many people watched that?
The WrestleMania 3, I know it's like 80,000 people in the joint.
They aired a replay on NBC and 33 million people watched it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. That's how big Hulk Hogan was.
Yeah, they realized like that is what, but it's partly him, it's partly wrestling, it's all of this. But Ethan raised this question as somebody who was not really into wrestling, and he was asking, why was Hulk Hogan such a big deal? Why did people love Hulk Hogan so much? And I have spent the last 96 hours and change trying to come up with an answer to that question, and I do not have it. We all, in everything I read, stipulated that he was a giant, enormous pop culture figure, that he was the most famous of all the wrestlers. I did not see anything that I thought gave a real explanation as to why it was that this guy was that popular and that famous, right? Because the thing is, you got to win over your block before you can win over your region, before you can win over your country, before you can win over the world, right? In this case, I'm using the block as being wrestling. Like he had to win over wrestling to move into this bigger world of pop culture fame, right? How exactly he won over wrestling, and I mean the wrestling fans, not the machinations of the wrestling business, right? Just winning over and becoming such a popular wrestling fan. Vince can't make you like who you like or not like who you want to like. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? Those crowds who loved the Hulkster were real. We all acknowledge that he was a bad wrestler. Okay, right? We all generally stipulate that he was a bad wrestler. And the majority of the really popular wrestlers are good wrestlers. He wasn't exactly the coolest wrestler. I mean, he ain't no Ric Flair, right? We also wind up with that part. He's not really that guy. And low key, his character was a little bit corny, right? The training, the prayers, and the vitamins, even though we found out that the vitamins, you couldn't buy them in stores. You know what I'm saying? Like, he out here telling you, take vitamins to get as big as me. Meanwhile, he putting his pants down and putting his booty out, right? Neither here nor there. So why exactly is it that we had so much affection for the Hulkster, right? And look, that's the question that gets us to the grave dancing, because the grave dancing came around because people found it, this is my belief, that people found it to be so disappointing when you found out like the depths of Hulkamania's racism. Like that was tough for a lot of people. Like I can't begin to explain to the majority of you what the heel turn of 1996, where Hulkamania got down with the NWO, was. It was grown men crying. It was like finding out that Santa Claus was a pimp. Like it like the elves wasn't really doing it because they wanted to. The elves was out here on the stroll, right? It was jarring for people. And this is with the understanding that wrestling is not real. I'm sorry. This is with the understanding that wrestling is scripted. Okay? Even with that understanding, people were heartbroken because somehow, some way, even after we found out that the vitamins wasn't vitamins, there was a level of trust and care that people had for this character to the place where they did not believe it was a character. And again, I don't really understand why we cared so much about this dude in the first place, right? Now, there was very solid positioning of him given the times of the 80s and going into the 90s, right? Like Hulk Hogan was a Captain American sort of figure, right? You got him fighting the Iron Sheik when we on rock with Iran, right? We don't rock with the Soviet Union. He was out here fighting Nikolai Volkov. Man, they had to make Sergeant Slaughter an Iraqi. You know what I'm saying? I know that's not how you say them words, man, but we talking about wrestling. They don't say shit right over there. So anyway, Sergeant Slaughter, he pledged Iraqi, and then Hulk Hogan was going against him and the various fake Iraqis they put on his side. Apparently, somehow, this is amazing, the Iron Sheik was with Iran, and then he switched teams to play for Iraq. They had just been in a war like the year before. Wrestling. Different shit. But anyway, yeah, you put Hulk Hogan on the sides of these people and everything else. But the magnitude of the star in a wrestling and out of wrestling. When I was a kid, and maybe this was part of it, right? Like, this is what I've stopped and thought about. One thing that I thought they did a great job of with the Hulkster when I was younger, it felt like he never wrestled unless you paid $20 to watch it. Like, he wasn't on All-American Wrestling on USA. He wasn't on WWF Superstars on the weekend. He might come out there. He might do some talking, but you ain't never really get to see the Hulkster wrestle. It felt like the Macho Man was wrestling 4 times a week on TV. You never saw the Hulkster. The Hulkster held the title down for 4 years in a row. It was like he was FDR, right? He was like wrestling dictator or whatever. Like he was like the king. He was never going anywhere. And then when he finally lost his championship, it was because they cheated. And then they had a whole tournament where it was a chance that he could get the whole thing back, right? Every time the Hulkster came to the ring, it took him 5 minutes to even wrestle. If he was going to wrestle, they played that whole Real American song because it took him all that time to get out there. He'd be in the ring doing that and that to everybody, and he'd rip off his shirt. He did the whole 9. It was amazing. And again, what exactly was it that we were here for? It was stunning how high the Q rating for Hulkamania was. Stunning how high the Q rating was. And I still don't have a great answer, right? Like when I used to do radio in Raleigh, you know, it was the year 2008 when I started doing it. Divided times in America or whatever. A lot of white people didn't really like the idea of me doing that show. I'm sure there were some black people who didn't either, but they didn't feel like calling me and telling me about it every day. You know what I'm saying? And so they called me, tell me I was racist, tell me I was this, tell me I was that. And then one day I had Ric Flair on as a guest, and the guy told me that if I had Ric Flair on, I couldn't have been so bad. You know what I'm saying? Wrestling is like sandwich shops. You go to the sandwich shop, it's a little bit of everybody in there, right? Like there is no one particular demographic really when it comes to that. Wrestling, very similar, especially since most of us watched it as kids. But anyway, wrestling I figured out as the device was a bit unifying. And every now and then, when I just wanted to give everybody a pick-me-up and us all feel good, I knew a few things that could work, right? And one of them invariably was that Real American song that the Hulkster would come to the ring to. And to this day, even after we found out everything about the Hulkster, you played a Real American song, I'm about to be jamming up in here. Like it goes to a place inside me. And look, I don't know if you guys have been paying much attention to me when I talk about my upbringing, but I did not grow up in a house raised by a man that was really out here putting on for the Real American. And what the hell is a Real American anyway? He said that he was fighting for the rights of every man. We know goddamn well Hulk Hogan wasn't doing that. Right? But you play that song, man. I'm right here. The dude that made that song, his other song is called Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. Does that sound like what I'm about? Does that sound like what I came from? Hell no. But you start playing that and we all start jamming. Like he was that unifying sort of figure. Was he just that good on the mic? Because anybody, you do a Hulkamania impression in writing, all you got to do is put the word brother at the end of something. I know exactly how it sounds. All of us do. All of us do. It is across the board. I don't know how many people that we can truly say this about, right? Like, I can't think of a song that as many people know the words to as people know if you go, what you gonna do, brother? Right? I don't know how. For somebody that people in his real life didn't seem to like that much, what we found out later, people didn't seem to like that much. And even at the time, like he wasn't The Rock. The Rock was hilarious, right? The Rock is like every. So how did we get here? I don't have an answer to that. I'm not here to give you an answer. I'm just telling you I thought it was fascinating that I still could not come up with why it is, because I wanted to come up better with why it was to explain to Ethan that, to give him an explanation for why it hurt so bad for a lot of people when you found out what the Hulkster was about. And I know for Black people, hey, man, we don't necessarily want to be, admit this and understand how it sounds, but it's the truth, man. It's a special kind of pain when you feel like you got a white homie and then you find out he kicking it like your granddaddy told you. You know what I'm saying? Like it's rough when you find that out. It's a unique sort of sting and betrayal that you get in those moments, right? However, we know things about Ric Flair that aren't so great. When Ric Flair dies, we're not going to break them out like that. It doesn't land the same. Like, as much as people like me loved Ric Flair, there's something different about Hulk Hogan. It just landed completely different. It just went there. It's an interesting thought, something worth considering. Now, I want to say one last thing about the Hulkster before we move on. My buddy David Dennis wrote a column for Anscape that I thought was interesting, and it was kind of sort of in the same vein as the grave dancing topic, which was his argument about Hulk Hogan was, because the question was, what was Hulk Hogan's legacy? And I just want to take a moment to say, we've really gone too far when we start talking about legacy. The man was a play fighter for a living, and you talking about what his legacy is. He's not Muhammad Ali, all right? But the question came up as to what his legacy was, and David made the argument that if you are a racist, that is your legacy, right? And I understood what I felt like the larger point of that was, but I also think that is absolutely not true. It's true if you want it to be, but a legacy is not a personal idea to me, right? Like, a legacy is something that is really a consensus argument, right? There are lots of people who have demonstrated themselves to be racist, to be misogynist, to be all kinds of terrible people, and that doesn't necessarily become what their legacy is, right? If we were to put this into musical terms, R. Kelly's legacy is going to be the way he treated women and everything that came around it. And I said women. I have to say females, because we're not just talking about women, we're talking about girls too, right? That is going to be his legacy. James Brown's legacy is not beating women. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but if you were to ask somebody what the legacy of James Brown is, it's not that, right? This doesn't map one-to-one in that way. But if you do exhibit those characteristics, if you do things like traffic women, beat women, do untoward things to them or whatever, it is on the board that will be your legacy. Like, that is an option. With Hulk Hogan, again, it is hard to have a legacy when what we know you for is play fighting. There's no substance there, okay? Like, what is The Rock's legacy? Does The Rock have a legacy? He's a very entertaining play fighter. Like, that does not mean that you have a legacy, right? But when Bobby Bowden died, I did a couple of shows, and I did Rich Eisen's show. And we were talking about Bobby Bowden. Bobby Bowden died, I want to say, in 2021, or somewhere around there. But anyway, Bobby apparently had been sick right around the 2020 election. And he put out a statement, or it was a statement put out on his behalf that said that he was doing fine and he didn't have much longer to go, but that he wanted to live long enough so that he could vote for President Trump. With 2021, okay. So he wanted to live long enough so that he could vote for President Trump. He chose that as his legacy. That's what that man said. That's what he wanted to, in his dying days or dying weeks, dying months, whatever it was. That was what he wanted. That is how he wanted to be remembered. And I have no choice but to do it. And that was whack too, because people my age, I like Bobby Bowden, right? But that was what we had to do. That was his call. He decided that's what he wanted, right? Hogan showed up at that wild rally at Madison Square Garden, and he was implying that Kamala Harris, who he refused to pronounce her name properly, right? He talked about, used her name like he was one of them cats that he used to wrestle against. He had opportunities to atone with what he got caught saying. He didn't do that. He wanted to be remembered in this way. He didn't even have the wherewithal, because if you look up what he said about his daughter, and he said his daughter was dating some N-word, and that he hoped that at least if she was dating an N-word, it could be a rich N-word, like a rapper or a basketball player. And all I'm saying is Kanye West had not one, but 2 hits along that premise. And that was before he went crazy, at least publicly. He wasn't the first person to say something like that. Just throwing it out there. That being said, the example of the person that I made out there bears a resemblance to a Nazi. Anyway, the Hulkster put that out there. He had chances to be like, hey, my bad. And he was, no, that wasn't it. That wasn't it. He ain't even have it in him to be like, I didn't mean it. And this from a man known for telling amazing lies. Ryan, did you know that Hulk Hogan once said that he was almost made the bass player for Metallica after Cliff Burton died?
No, I never heard that one before.
Yes, Hulk Hogan. You know that friend that be saying anything?
Yeah, some people are really masters of their own delusion.
Yeah, man, he'll tell any lie. He couldn't even cook up a lie in this case. He couldn't even cook up it wasn't me. Couldn't even do it. He
didn't think he had to.
Didn't think he had to. He wanted us to think this about him. And if he wanted us to think this about him, then he must not have minded if some people danced on his grave. That was his call. I'm just going to take a little bit more time to try to figure out why I care about this at all.